Hello everyone, VGC Mike here, back with more Regulation F content. With the Regulation F ladder due to begin in only a couple of days, I've decided to put together 5 teams to help anyone hit the ground running and rank up to Master Ball tier. I've made videos on each one of these teams that I'll leave links to in the description of the video if you'd like to see how they play. But with that being said, let's get right to the teams. Alright, our first team features Entei and Raging Bolt. Entei is definitely picking up in popularity because he's getting really awkward to deal with. The fact that he has inner focus makes it so he's immune to fake out and intimidate, and his sacred fire attack just really hard to switch into. A 50% chance to burn. If you switch in with something that resists and it's a physical attacker, it's pretty much useless for the rest of the game. If you switch into something that doesn't resist and is a special attacker, it's probably taking a lot of damage, and the assault vest makes it really hard to knock out. You also have Raging Bolt on this team, which, you know, in our case, we have the booster energy because we don't have any way to set up Sun, and Raging Bolt is really powerful once you set up one Calm Mind and a booster energy. Raging Bolt, you might, you know, for this type of team, I consider this more of an offensive team. We don't really have Tailwind. If they want to set up Tailwind, we're probably just going to try to slap them in the face with Entei and Qianpao, and maybe even Rillaboom with some Grassy Glide action. But you could also just opt to go with Porygon 2 and set up a Trick Room if they do Tailwind. We also have Icy Wind on Porygon 2 to help slow things down if we're really getting outsped. But yeah, I would probably recommend just going with the bottom 4 most of the time. If you see something that should handle most teams, in my opinion. And if you see something where it's either another Trick Room team, or, you know, maybe in the case of a Tailwind or certain Pokemon that you're dealing with, I would bring the Porygon 2 and Raging Bolt stuff. You could also bring Porygon 2 or Raging Bolt with the bottom 3 depending on the situation. I actually am really fond of the Porygon 2 on this team, so you can definitely mix it up and everything, but I would say from like a traditional team building perspective, the bottom 4 are like how I would usually run this team, and just try to hit them with hard offensive physical attackers. Alright, and for our second team, we have more of a setup oriented strategy where we either have a Goldengo that likes to set up nasty plots, or an Urshifu that likes to set up swords dances. And then basically the idea of the team is to protect those two. I mean, you're not going to usually bring both. It's an option, you could, but usually you'll bring one of them, and then you'll use either double fake out with Incineroar or Rillaboom, or follow me with Electabuzz to help protect that Pokemon. And then Tornadus, it's got Focus Sash, so you can kind of play it a little bit more loosely. It's not like a, you know, obviously with a bulky Tornadus, depending on how bulky it is, you may be able to take like 2 or 3 hits. Focus Sash is going to guarantee that you take at least 1 hit, which gives you a little bit of room to play it a little bit more offensively if you just want to go spam Bleak Wind Storms. But you could also potentially switch it in, and if you don't expect to double up, it's pretty much safe to switch it in and probably get off a Tailwind next turn. So this team you can definitely play, you know, without Tailwind very easily if you just want to use the double fake out setup and then follow me to save your Goldengo or your Urshifu. But in certain situations, especially if they have their own spread type attackers, the follow me might not be so great, and just go with the Tailwind option and outspeed whoever's trying to spam the spread moves. Alright, and for our third team, this team features both Gouging Fire and Walking Wake. So this is more of a Photosynthesis Sun team, and Gouging Fire uses Dragon Dance to set up with the Clear Amulet so it can't get intimidated too much by opposing Incineroars and potentially Landorus's that you might see running around. And then with Walking Wake, we have more of an all-out attack situation where we have the Life Orb, and our Photosynthesis boost will actually give us a special attack increase. So I would recommend always pairing Tornadus with Walking Wake. There's probably situations where you can get around that a little bit. Maybe start with Walking Wake and then Incineroar, and you know, Parting Shot into Tornadus. That could potentially work, but most times I would, you know, probably bring Walking Wake with Tornadus, and then depending on the situation, go with the Gouging Fire setup if that doesn't look so great. We also have Porygon 2 on the team, which I've become pretty fond of. It helps reverse Trick Room. It also gives you a little bit of speed control with the Icy Wind. And of course we have double fake out with Incineroar and Rillaboom. All right, we have our fourth team. This one is focused a little bit more around either Kingambit or Landorus. Again, you can bring both of these Pokemon to any match you want. It's not like you have to bring one or the other, but usually one of those two Pokemon are going to be your main attackers. There's plenty of Pokemon on this team that can deal damage, so this team is definitely a little bit more balanced than the other ones. Not that the other ones were like unbalanced, but any one of these Pokemon could pick up knockouts. All of these Pokemon are relatively defensive except for maybe Landorus, and it just has really good defensive and offensive synergy. So if you're seeing a lot of Intimidate stuff on the other side of the team, on the opposing team, then you can bring, just lead Kingambit, try to set up some Sword Stances, and it's going to get really awkward for them to try to deal with that, especially if you support Kingambit with a fake out user like Rillaboom or Incineroar. Incineroar is going to make it even harder for them to knock out Kingambit with his own Intimidate going off, and Rillaboom's going to give him grassy terrain, which is going to heal him up every turn, which with Protect is actually pretty significant. Other than that, you have Ogerpon for Follow Me support. He's also very powerful, so if you think that they're going to play passively because you're using Follow Me, just hit them with the Ivy Cudgel and force them to respect the Ogerpon. Latias is a little bit more of a bulky option over something like Tornadus. With the Rocky Helmet, it also pretty much counters Urshifu, unless Urshifu's running something like U-Turn or Ice Spinner on a Choice Scarf set. But other than that, Latias is pretty much a hard counter to Urshifu. And then Landorus is, again, this is our... If any of these Pokemon are considered a glass cannon, it's going to be Landorus. His defenses are not the greatest, they're not terrible, but with the Sheer Force ability and the Life Orb item, he can knock out so many Pokemon in one hit. It's crazy. First of all, the coverage between Earth Power and Sludge Bomb is really amazing. It hits Incineroar for super effective, it hits Rillaboom for super effective, and these are all Pokemon that you're going to see on a lot of teams. I would bet that 50% of teams or more are going to have one or both of those Pokemon. So it's great coverage. And honestly, with Earth Power, that will knock out a surprising amount of Pokemon, even if it's neutral. You may need some chip damage, maybe with one of your fake out users. Just having fake out go off might be enough to get a knockout with Earth Power, but he really can pick up a lot of KOs, and the game can get out of control pretty quickly. Okay, so our last team is a Weezing team that features Primarina as well. I made a Weezing team last regulation, and I was a pretty big fan of it, so I wanted to make sure I updated the team a little bit. And the last version of the team, I was using an ability shield on my Landorus. I decided to keep Landorus, but give him the Choice Scarf, and instead give the ability shield to Incineroar. And one of the reasons I wanted to do that is because Incineroar is just a really great Pokemon to lead with all the time. Intimidates, fake outs, really effective lead, and it's a lot easier for me to go Incineroar, Weezing, than it is for me to just go Landorus, Weezing all the time with the ability shield go off. It's also nice to have Landorus in the back so that I can switch in and block any ground attacks coming in on either one of them that I might be expecting. But other than that, the team is kind of just built around trying to prevent damage from your opponent. And it's really effective if you're seeing a lot of physical attackers on your opponent's side. With the double Intimidate and Weezing having Will-O-Wisp, it can be easy to kind of shut them down in a way that's pretty hard for them to deal with. And if you're seeing special attackers and you're able to get Primarina set up with some Calm Minds, that in conjunction with the Intimidates and the Will-O-Wisp, it can kind of shut down anything if you do it properly, unless you're running into a really bad matchup. Porygon 2 is also a good option to use in replacement of Primarina if you just want something bulky that you're trying to support, lower the damage output from the opponent, because Porygon 2 is hard enough to knock out even without any Intimidates. It's really common to have Porygon 2 out, your opponent to double into Porygon 2 and still not be able to knock it out, unless they hit him with a super effective attack. He's really quite difficult to KO. So with Intimidate support, Will-O-Wisp support on top of that, it can become a nightmare a little bit for them. And then of course we have Ogrepon again with Follow Me, protection, and also just giving some decent offensive pressure as well. But that's it for our 5 teams. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below, and good luck with your battles.